For years, people thought Celine Dion's son, René-Charles, would follow in her footsteps. Everyone believed he would become a singer and stay in the world of music, just like his famous mother. But René-Charles had very different plans for his life. At 24, he finally opened up about what he had been doing in secret all these years. His family had kept it quiet, his mother worried constantly, and his late father would have been completely shocked. But René-Charles no longer cared about the fears or doubts of others. His confession this year revealed the reason behind his silence and why Celine had been so protective of him all this time. To understand why this matters so much, we have to look back at Celine Dion's own life. She was born on March 30, 1968, in a small town called Charlemagne, near Montreal, Canada. She was the youngest of 14 children in a very crowded household. Their home was so small that her mother once joked there wasn't even space for one more spoon at the table. With 16 people living under one roof, there was no quiet corner, no privacy, and no luxury. Just noise, chaos, and constant movement. When Celine was born, her family didn't even have a crib. Instead, her parents placed her in a dresser drawer lined with blankets. It wasn't a creative choice. It was their only option. They didn't have the money or space for proper baby furniture. At the time, the average Canadian family earned around $6,000 a year, but the Dions had much less income and far more mouths to feed. Her father worked long hours as a butcher, earning very little, while her mother stayed home to raise the children and sew clothes from scraps and hand-me-downs. Celine grew up sharing beds with her sisters, sometimes 3 to a mattress. When there wasn't enough room, couches, floors, and even hallways were used as sleeping spaces. She often described the way they slept as like sardines, crammed tightly together. This wasn't just for a short time, it lasted well into her teenage years. Life was difficult, but the Dion family always had one thing to keep their spirits alive: music. Her father loved to sing, her mother played the violin, and they even named her Celine after a French ballad they adored. From the very beginning, music was in her blood. At just 5 years old, she was already singing in her parents' small piano bar, performing alongside her siblings. But outside the home, life was far less kind. At school, Celine was bullied for her looks. She was very thin, had large teeth, and didn't fit in with the other children. They cruelly called her vampire. The teasing was not occasional. It happened every day. Celine later admitted that the bullying left deep scars. She remembered the heavy feeling of walking into class, knowing that she would be mocked again. Childhood photos from those years often show a shy, quiet girl who looked as if she wanted to disappear. When she began performing as a teenager, the criticism didn't stop. Local tabloids mocked her appearance, calling her Canine Dion because of her teeth. She was still just a child, yet grown adults in the media joined in on the ridicule. While her talent was undeniable, the headlines focused more on her looks than her voice. By the time she was 18, Celine decided she had enough. She quietly underwent dental surgery, braces, caps, and other work, to change her smile. When she returned, she was determined to be noticed for her talent and strength rather than her appearance. School had never been her place. She once said, "I detested school," explaining that she never felt like she belonged there. Instead, her real lessons came from her family. Her siblings were her teachers, and the dinner table became her classroom. She learned resilience, performance, and determination at home, not in a traditional school setting. Despite their struggles, the Dion family found creative ways to survive. All 14 children formed a band together and performed at local venues across Quebec. They called themselves Dion's Family, and Celine was an active part of the group from the very beginning. By age 12, she had already written her first song and recorded a demo. Her very first public performance was at her brother Michel's wedding in 1973. For Celine, music wasn't just about fun, it was about survival. The family shows helped bring in a little money, but more importantly, they gave her a safe place to shine. At school, she often felt small and unwanted, but in the family basement, surrounded by her brothers and sisters, she felt safe and alive. Every afternoon, instead of spending time with friends, She rushed straight home to make music with her siblings. That noisy, crowded basement, full of instruments, laughter, and song, became her refuge. It was there, among her family, that Celine discovered her true voice. Music gave her strength. Every note she sang was like a weapon against the teasing and the pain she endured in the outside world. She turned her hurt into power, and the more she sang, the stronger she became. In June 1980, a little girl with big dreams walked into a local recording studio with her family. They had managed to save just enough money to record a demo. It wasn't fancy, just a few simple songs written with the help of her mother and siblings. At an age when most kids were still riding bikes and playing games, Celine had only one thing on her mind: music. That day, with her family by her side, she sang into a studio microphone and unknowingly took the very first step toward global stardom. What started in a noisy kitchen and basement would one day echo across stadiums filled with millions of fans. Her mother, Therese, believed so strongly in Celine's talent that she took a huge risk. She mortgaged the family home just to send that demo tape to a music manager named René-Charles. Therese chose him carefully. He was the manager of Quebec's most famous singer at the time, Jeanette Reno, who Celine deeply admired. But there was only enough money to send one tape. If it was ignored or thrown away, the dream would be over. But fate was on their side. René listened to the tape, and what he heard stunned him. He later said it was the best voice he had ever heard in his life. Some people claimed he cried, others said he sat in silence, completely overwhelmed. What he did next shocked everyone. He mortgaged his own house, more than $100,000, to fund the career of a 12-year-old girl who had never even performed on a real stage. His friends thought he was crazy, but René didn't care. He believed in her. By 1983, just 3 years later, Celine was already a rising star in Quebec. By 1988, she was standing on the world stage, winning the Eurovision Song Contest and proving to millions that her talent was unstoppable. Their first meeting wasn't a glamorous audition. When the Dion family came to see René, he didn't even have a real microphone for her. Instead, he handed Celine a pencil and said, "Pretend you're singing to a full stadium." Without hesitation, she stood tall, held the pencil like a mic, and sang as if her life depended on it. She sang Suenitate Chuan Rev, and René couldn't believe his ears. Later, he said that even though there were only a few family members in the room, she performed as if there were 10,000 people listening. That moment sealed her future. Between the ages of 13 and 18, Celine released 9 French-language albums. While most teenagers were worried about school dances or exams, she was already becoming an international star. At just 15 years old, she made history in France as the first Canadian artist to receive a gold record there with a song d'amour ou d'amitié. But behind the bright lights and achievements, Celine carried a secret she couldn't tell anyone. At 18, she had fallen deeply in love with her manager, René-Charles, who was 44 at the time. The age gap alone was enough to spark gossip, but it was even more complicated than that. Celine was consumed by her feelings. She kept a photo of him under her pillow and looked at it every night, even while still sharing a bedroom with her mother. Her emotions were so overwhelming that she felt physically sick. She dreamed about him, lost sleep, and struggled to focus. René had already been divorced twice and was old enough to be her father, but none of that stopped Celine's heart. The more impossible it seemed, the stronger her feelings grew. Eventually, her mother, Therese, who had been Celine's biggest supporter from the very beginning, discovered her secret. Celine's mother always believed in her daughter's voice and gave everything to help her succeed. But when she discovered that her teenage daughter had fallen in love with a man nearly 30 years older, she was shocked and horrified. René wasn't just older. He had been part of Celine's life since she was only 12 years old. To her mother, Therese, it felt dangerous and reckless. She worried that her daughter's future and innocence were at risk. When Therese confronted Celine, she probably expected her daughter to admit it was just a passing crush. But instead of backing down, Celine stood firm. She told her mother, "We live in a free country. I can love whoever I want." It wasn't just about defending her feelings, it was about standing up for her independence. Celine was determined not to let anyone control her heart. By the time she turned 19, her secret crush became a real relationship. Their first official date happened quietly, far away from cameras and reporters. 4 years, Celine and René kept their romance hidden from the public. Only close friends and family knew. They were careful, because they knew many people would judge them harshly. Still, their love was real, and they were willing to wait until the world was ready. Meanwhile, Celine's career kept moving forward. At the height of her early fame, she made a bold choice. She disappeared from the spotlight for 18 months. It wasn't because of scandal. It was part of a plan. During that time, she capped her teeth, changed her hairstyle, and focused on learning fluent English. She didn't want to be known as just a child star in Quebec. She wanted to become a global artist. When she finally returned, everything was different. Her voice was as powerful as ever, but her image had transformed, and people took notice. Then came the night that changed everything. On April 30th, 1988, in front of more than 600 million viewers, 20-year-old Celine Dion performed at the Eurovision Song Contest. Representing Switzerland, she delivered a performance so electrifying that it stunned the world. When the final votes were counted, Switzerland beat the United Kingdom by just 1 point, 137 to 136. That razor-thin victory made her famous across Europe overnight. Her winning song, Ne partez pas sans moi, became the last French-language song ever to win Eurovision, and it launched Celine onto the international stage. In 1990, she took her biggest leap yet with her first English-language album, Unison. The album sold over 1.2 million copies in the United States and went platinum. In Canada, it went 7 times platinum. The hit single Where Does My Heart Beat now reached number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100, an almost unheard-of achievement for a French-speaking artist. Suddenly, Celine wasn't just a Canadian star. She was breaking into the global pop world. That same year, she made her first big American TV appearance on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. After hearing her sing live, Leno looked straight into the camera and boldly predicted that she would have an extraordinary career. For Celine, that moment was huge. No one had ever said something like that about a young French-Canadian singer before. But Leno was right. His predictions soon came true. By 1992, even the Wall Street Journal, a newspaper usually focused on business and finance, called her a once-in-a-generation voice. She wasn't just being compared to pop stars anymore. Critics were putting her in the same category as legends. Her voice had become her signature, powerful, pure, and unforgettable. On her 24th birthday, March 30th, 1992, Celine performed Beauty and the Beast with Peabo Bryson at the Academy Awards. The song had just won both an Oscar and a Grammy. Singing live in front of Hollywood's biggest names, she delivered a performance that left the audience in awe. That same night, she launched her next English-language album. Within 24 hours, she was back on The Tonight Show, and by then, everyone agreed. Jay Leno's prediction had come true. Then came December 17, 1994, a day that shocked fans across Canada. At just 26 years old, Celine Dion married René-Charles in a lavish wedding broadcast live on national television. Millions of viewers watched as she walked down the aisle at Montreal's Notre Dame Basilica, wearing a silk gown with a 20-foot train and a glittering tiara that weighed 7 pounds. More than 500 guests attended the ceremony, with over 10,000 flowers filling the church. For the first time, Celine and René publicly revealed their romance to the world. The age gap, 26 years, sparked headlines everywhere, but their love was undeniable. But even as her music career soared higher than ever, Celine faced heartbreaking struggles in her personal life. In her early 30s, she began fertility treatments. For nearly a decade, she and René tried desperately to have children. They went through at least 7 rounds of IVF, a painful and exhausting process. They suffered a miscarriage, and at times, it seemed impossible. Celine, one of the most celebrated voices in the world, carried this private pain quietly. Then in 1999, tragedy struck again. René was diagnosed with throat cancer. Before starting treatment, doctors froze his sperm, but soon discovered his sperm count was already very low. Natural conception became almost impossible. The treatments tested both of them physically and emotionally, but they refused to give up hope. Finally, in May 2000, Celine traveled to New York to undergo 2 surgical procedures at one of the world's top fertility clinics. It was her last chance, and what happened next would change her life forever. The 2 surgeries Celine went through happened just 4 days apart. Her medical team told her she would need at least 10 days of complete rest afterward, and she listened. For the first time in her career, she paused everything to focus on just one dream, becoming a mother. The pressure was enormous. It didn't only come from the constant media attention, but also from her own deep hopes and fears. Still, she stayed strong and kept believing. Finally, on January 25, 2001, her dream came true. In Florida, she gave birth to a baby boy, 3 weeks earlier than expected. He weighed 6 pounds and 8 ounces. They named him René-Charles. Celine was 33 years old, and after years of pain, struggle and heartbreak, her joy was finally complete. The world celebrated with her. To her fans, the moment felt perfect, like a fairy tale finally fulfilled. After his birth, Celine made a decision few superstars of her level would dare. She stepped away from the spotlight for 3 whole years to focus completely on her son and her family. It wasn't just about motherhood. It was proof that patience, faith, and love could make the impossible possible. But her story didn't end there. In an interview in 2001, Celine revealed something deeply personal. When René-Charles was conceived through IVF, doctors had created another embryo, which remained frozen. Celine admitted she felt a strong connection to it and couldn't imagine leaving it unused. That embryo stayed frozen for nearly 9 years, until in 2010, it was used to help her give birth to twin boys. The same science that had once made her a mother gave her the chance to expand her family again. Long before this chapter of her life, Celine was already one of the most powerful voices and biggest stars in the music world. In 1996, she released Falling Into You, an album that changed her career forever. It sold over 32 million copies worldwide, 12 million in the United States alone, and another 2.1 million in the United Kingdom. France, Germany, Canada, and Australia each crossed the million mark. The album didn't just sell. It won the Grammy Award for Album of the Year in 1997, beating out legends like the Beatles and Beck. Even decades later, songs like Because You Loved Me and It's All Coming Back to Me now remain timeless favorites, each selling millions on their own. Then came the song that defined her career. In 1997, My Heart Will Go On was released as the theme for the film Titanic. The song became an unstoppable global phenomenon. By 1998, it had sold 18 million physical copies and reached number 1 in more than 20 countries. In Europe, it stayed at the top of the charts for 17 straight weeks. In Germany, France, and the UK combined, more than 4.6 million physical copies were sold. In the United States, the song reached a record-breaking 117 million radio plays in a single month. Even today, the song is streamed hundreds of millions of times each year, introducing her voice to new generations who weren't even born when Titanic was released. This success wasn't about one lucky hit. Celine became the first woman in music history to have 2 separate albums sell more than 30 million copies each. Falling Into You reached 32 million, while Let's Talk About Love, released in 1997, followed with 31 million. No other female artist has ever achieved this. These albums weren't short-lived trends either. They stayed on the charts worldwide for months and months, carried higher by the power of songs like My Heart Will Go On. In 2003, she changed the very future of Las Vegas entertainment. Caesars Palace built a $95 million arena called the Coliseum just for her, with 4,300 seats. At the time, Las Vegas was seen as a place where aging stars went when their careers were slowing down. But Celine transformed that idea. Over 5 years, she sold more than 3 million tickets and earned over $385 million. Her success inspired a new wave of major stars, including Elton John, Britney Spears, and Lady Gaga, to launch their own Vegas residencies. What she started became the model for modern Las Vegas shows. Behind the fame and fortune, though, was a love story and a private battle that lasted for years. Celine and René's relationship was unlike any other, but it wasn't without pain. In April 1998, René was diagnosed with throat cancer. He went through surgery and treatment and made what doctors called a miraculous recovery. But the disease came back. In December 2013, another tumor was found. Though it was removed, the treatments left lasting damage. René could no longer eat on his own and had to be fed through a tube. Celine often handled this care herself, in between rehearsals and performances. René, even in his weakest moments, remained her manager and partner in music, helping shape her shows and world tours. Each time his cancer returned, Celine dropped everything. In August 2014, she cancelled her Las Vegas shows and even a planned tour in Asia. These cancellations cost millions of dollars, but she never hesitated. She said her husband's health and comfort were more important than anything else. Her devotion had been clear long before. In the early 2000s, when she was only 32 and one of the world's top-selling artists, Celine stunned the industry by stepping away from the spotlight. She took a 2-year break, not only to help René recover but also to focus on building their family. Celine Dion made a rare and very personal choice in the music world. She stepped back from her career to focus on her family. That decision came from the heart, and in time, it paid off. In October 2010, at the age of 42, she gave birth to twin boys after a long and difficult journey. Their names were Nelson and Eddie. Nelson was named after Nelson Mandela, and Eddie was named in honor of Eddie Marnery, the producer who had helped launch her career. Each baby weighed just over 5 pounds, and both came from embryos that had been frozen years earlier. The road to that moment had not been easy. Celine went through 6 rounds of IVF and suffered a miscarriage along the way. When her twins finally arrived, it felt like nothing short of a miracle. Even as René's health began to decline, he and Celine remained partners in both love and work. They continued to shape her Las Vegas residency together, building something that changed entertainment history. But in January 2016, after years of battling throat cancer, René passed away at the age of 73. In his final months, Celine cared for him herself, even feeding him when he could no longer eat. Though he had stepped down as her manager, he remained the heart of her career and the center of her life. True to her promise, she stayed by his side until his very last breath. Years later, in 2024, the documentary I Am Celine Dion showed fans a side of her life they had never seen before. One of the most haunting moments captured on camera was a severe health crisis. During a recording session, she suffered a seizure that lasted nearly 8 minutes. Her body stiffened, and she moaned in pain, unable to move or speak. Her medical team rushed in, giving her 2 doses of emergency nasal spray while trying to keep her conscious. The director wanted to stop filming, but Celine refused. She insisted that the cameras keep rolling because she wanted people to understand the truth of what she was living with. That truth shocked the world. Celine was diagnosed with stiff person syndrome, or SPS, a condition so rare that only 1 or 2 people in a million are affected. The disorder causes painful and uncontrollable muscle spasms that can be triggered by sound, touch, or even emotion. It can twist the body, damage the spine, and in some cases, take away the ability to walk. There is no cure, only treatments to help manage the symptoms, including medications like benzodiazepines and botulinum toxin injections. For Celine, the diagnosis explained years of mysterious symptoms. Before doctors discovered the condition, she had hidden her struggles from the world. She performed through the pain, often pushing herself to do as many as 70 shows in a single year. Behind the scenes, she quietly visited specialists, tried new treatments, and forced herself to smile for her fans. Pretending everything was fine nearly broke her, but she didn't want to let people down. It wasn't until August 2022 that doctors finally confirmed her illness. That December, she decided to share the truth with her fans. The weight of hiding it was finally gone. Now her sons, Nelson and Eddie, play an important role in her care. At just 14 years old, they know how to recognize the warning signs of a crisis. Celine has trained them to turn her on her side during a seizure, to press the panic buttons around the house, and to call for help if needed. Every night, they practice emergency drills together, making sure they are ready. They even check in on her if she takes too long to get ready for bed. It is a responsibility no child should have, but they carry it with love and maturity, standing by their mother the way she once stood by their father. Even though René is gone, Celine still feels his presence. In 2021, she revealed that she often speaks to him when life feels overwhelming. She senses him with her during the darkest moments of her illness. To her, he remains her husband, her best friend, and her greatest source of strength. That bond, she says, has never left her. Celine's strength and talent have been honored around the world. On May 22, 2008, she received France's highest civilian award, the Legion of Honor, from President Nicolas Sarkozy at the Élysée Palace. Very few foreigners are ever given this recognition. By then, she had already sold more than 12 million copies of her French-language album Do, making her the most successful French-language singer in history. In 2023, Rolling Stone ranked her as the 10th greatest Canadian artist of all time, just behind legends like Joni Mitchell and Neil Young. No other solo female pop artist from Canada ranked higher. This recognition for Celine Dion's incredible career came decades after her very first hit songs, showing the world that her influence has lasted far beyond passing trends and changes in the music industry. She has remained one of the most powerful and beloved voices of all time, and her legacy continues to inspire both fans and new generations of artists. Her eldest son, René-Charles, is now beginning to build his own path and make his mark in surprising ways. At 24 years old, he has already stepped into two completely different worlds, music and professional poker. In 2021, he released a hip-hop EP, showing his talent as a musician and proving that creativity runs in the family. Then, in July 2025, he shocked the poker community when he advanced deep into the World Series of Poker main event. Out of more than 9,700 players from around the world, he managed to reach Day 5 of the tournament with 2.8 million chips in front of him. His performance earned him about $70,000 and the respect of many professionals in the game. What made the achievement even more meaningful was the connection to his father. René-Charles, Celine's late husband, had also been a serious poker player during his life. Now, René-Charles is carrying on that legacy, balancing music in one hand and cards in the other. It shows not only his ambition but also how the spirit of his father lives on through him. For Celine, seeing her son step into his own life journey is a reminder that even through pain and loss, the future of her family remains bright.